I'm joined by Kimberly Friedmutter, who is a world-renowned hypnotherapist and the author of Subconscious Power. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. You're one of the smartest people I've ever met, so I really enjoy listening to all of the other things that you've put out on the internet, your podcasts, and all of those things. It's really intriguing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I tried to do my homework, and doing my homework, I found out that you're a multifaceted person, and it's difficult to put a certain kind of label on you by no means. I mean, if you could just share with the viewers your journey from a model when you were young to becoming a radio talk show host to hypnotherapist, life management expert, and even overseeing some of the beauty pageants. So where do we begin?
Well, I think it all boils down to curiosity. I think when you're a curious person, which happens to be my end result of what I think cures depression, by the way, is curiosity. And it's one of those things I was just really blessed to be curious. And in that curiosity through school and science and math, and that's why I appreciate so much your mind is, along those lines. And it's not lost on me, just so you know. But I have always been just curious about how everything works. And in particular, then, as I started to have a more human experience, when you're coming out of I don't know if you had a chance to read my book or not, but the 8-year-old self is you start to be curious about others. And in that curiosity, I thought, what makes people tick and what makes them think like they do, and how we adopt the beliefs and have faith like we do. I was raised in Texas, and so deep in the Bible Belt. And, I was just fascinated by everyone's idea of how things work and, what everything is about. So digging into that, I decided to go model. So that was some segue. My mother had become very ill, and so she was diagnosed with 2 years to live. And so I was 12 at the time. So she said, okay, so at 14, you have to get out and really start working. So she contacted the people that I needed to know in New York and got that underway. And that worked out great. So, and she lived, by the way. I mean, she's not alive now, but she did live past that initial problem. So then I started living in Europe, and, you get your book together. I don't know how much you know about the modeling industry, but it's all about the photos and the shows and things. And so in that, then I really got an idea for what makes scripts and television and all that kind of thing work. And, the development of a story and screenplays and all of that, which then led to film and whatnot, little, films here and there. And then I started writing and produced a radio talk show. That was fantastic because it was on Howard Stern Station in Los Angeles. It was 97.1 KLSX. And that was amazing because, again, it had to do with the relationship dynamics. So we were kind of like Dr. Laura meets Playboy in a way, because Dr. Laura was very grassroots. If you remember, her show was huge for a long period of time, and she was very grassroots, but we brought the fun to it. And being in Los Angeles and being on Howard Station, it was important that we had that. And it was an FM talk station. And then from there, I became very interested in, again, kind of healing and metamorphosis, and how, we can really elevate ourselves into another mindset. And mindset became super important in my world at the time for various reasons. And so I decided to study hypnosis. I had been hypnotized many times in the past, and it had worked beautifully, one of which was for stage fright. And so I couldn't even have gotten or entertained the idea of the radio show had I not done that. So it was really helpful in progressing my career forward. So I decided to find out what was going on behind the scenes of the mind and what was in that sub-layer of consciousness that would get us to that point of really being able to move forward in life without the typical stumbling blocks.
Wow, that is so impactful. I don't even know where to begin. Let's go back to your earlier childhood, because I think the common thread or the narrative that I'm hearing is metamorphosis. When you're age 12 and your mother tells you that I only have a couple of years to live because I'm terminal, you'll need to figure out how to basically economically sustain yourself. That forces a young child to grow very fast. And then, of course, the modeling world is not only competitive, but it's also fierce and can be, kind of predatory for a young person as well. So how did you evolve as a person in that industry and continue to evolve even today?
It was scary. I have to say, when I go back to that mindset at that time, it was very scary. I mean, I cried in my bed at night. I was living in pensions with other folks, other models, male and female. It was scary. There was a lot of, addiction issues with people now that I, knew about after the fact, bulimia and a lot of things going on that at the time I was unaware of and then would become aware of. All of a sudden one of the girls would just not be there anymore in your apartment. And so then the agents would have the conversation, oh, they went back home, it wasn't working for them and this and that. It's very scary. I took to handling it, a little different. I remember I was in France, and it probably was Paris, and it was a Friday afternoon, it was pouring rain, and my father was in the car business in Texas. And so I knew cars and I knew car dealerships. And so I went running because I had written on my hand the address of where I lived. I don't speak French, and, barely, had a really strong accent, Texas accent at the time. And it was raining, and there's no cabs or any, I don't know where I am. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. And I open up my hand and I look at the address, and it's all smeared and I can't read it. And so I remember running into the car dealership, and it happened to be a Rolls Royce dealership. And I ran in and I said, "Parlez-vous English, y'all?" And I just didn't, all I knew was parlez-vous. I didn't know anything else. And I mean, they looked at me and I'm just crying, and I'm wet from the rain and the smeared, trying to show them on my hand my address, and I don't know where I live. And so at least, I knew my agents and whatnot, so they called them and I got picked up. But, it's times like that, but it really does get you to pull up your bootstraps. It's really, you have to buckle in for that kind of stuff. And so in hindsight, I'm happy, as most lessons are tough to go through and wonderful to look back on. It feels like that. And then a lot of girls, they liked the kind of nightlife and that kind of thing. I wasn't like that. I signed up for cooking school and all kinds of things. I remember having pieces of broccoli in my coffee maker, and I would use the hot water that would go down in the coffee maker to steam the vegetables, and I'd allow myself an artichoke a day. It was far from luxurious, that's for sure, but I was living on a per diem, and when you're starting out, that's what you do. So
well, that's raw and authentic. So thank you for sharing that. One of the things you mentioned is part of the reason you went into hypnosis is because you've needed to get into a certain role. And I think in many ways, all of us play different roles, don't we? Whether it's that of a father, husband, wife, daughter, whatever it is. And we have to get into a role. And certainly when you're in the entertainment business, whether it's beauty, modeling, or radio talk show, you have to fit the narrative. Yes. So what were some of the challenges that you personally had, and how did having something like this type of a tool and a methodology help you?
Because I started so early in it, it actually had the opposite effect. I was able to chameleonize. I'm not sure that's a word, but it's a word for now. So I was able to be chameleon-esque in so many ways and be whatever they wanted, because that is the beautiful morphing of when you're a model actress, is that you have that ability to just, deliver whatever that mood or emotion or feeling or whatever they're trying to evoke. And so I actually had a harder time finding myself after that, because when you're young and my household was not by any means calm, I wouldn't call it that, and I wouldn't call it healthy, and I wouldn't necessarily wish it on anyone, but you did have to really sidestep and look at what was going on, big picture, macro, so that you could understand first what the subconscious always wants to know: am I safe? And then am I fed, and am I watered, like a plant. so from a plant standpoint, those were very big concerns for me growing up. And so in that, I, was able to just be what I needed to be for whoever, whatever circumstances best suited me at the time. Then you come back to who am I, and then you're in your teen years, and then you're developing into a young lady, and then you're developing into a mate, and then you're developing into a better friend, better sister, better daughter, all of those things. And, and then a performance, for as a show host or as this or that, and now as a hypnotherapist, which is really, really interesting. And thank you for asking, because now, as a hypnotherapist, I am just the note taker, and I'm the one that's getting the information brought in assessing it. I don't really call it diagnosing because that's not what we do, but assessing it and then going back in with a clean slate and helping people kind of clean up what's going on, that they, all their filters and all the things that might not be true about their lives that they've been led to believe or have told themselves over the years. So it's kind of fascinating.
Mm. So that brings us to your book, Subconscious Power. Use your inner mind to create the life you've always wanted. Can you give us kind of the outline of the book and what are the key takeaways?
So really what happened was I was asked to write the book. I had a thriving practice and was super happy doing that. And I was approached by a woman at HarperCollins to ask if I would be open to writing a book about the things that I had learned. And, being able to help other people just that could buy a book and not actually have to come and see me, which I thought was a great idea. So it really took about a year for me to masticate and to figure out exactly what that would look like. The one thing I wanted to be certain was that I was not giving people one more thing to do. I call them shelf help books. I love them. I buy them. I feel better after I buy them. And then I shelve them sometimes. And I did not want this to be one more thing for us, busy folks to have to do, rather 1,000 less things to do once you understand how to work your mechanism. And so the woman had agreed to that. I did the proposal, got the whole team in place, submitted the proposal about a year after she had approached me, and she left HarperCollins. So the agent said, well, this is very interesting. Let's just put it out on the market and see what we really have. And so we did, and Simon & Schuster bought the book. It's the imprint Atria Books, who also did The Secret, and they published that book. And so, when you look at The Secret, you say, okay, this is summoning for, whatever out there. What do I want? But where does that actual summon come from? The subconscious. What do I want? What do I need? Are you safe? Am I fed? All of those basic things that the subconscious really, really focuses on. And so it was fascinating for me to do it because now I had to digest in what exact principles are the most important and in what order. So that in mind, the first one, of course, is accountability. And that's in most paradigms, be accountable. Where are you now? Looking at warts and all, I like to say, and, really looking at who you are and what's not perfect about life for you now. The second part would be to tap into your subconscious. Very, very important. And then from there, we kind of get into some things that are interesting for your subject of matter, which is climate change. One of the major principles is the give to get energetic loop. A lot of people find this touchy because, give to get, but we really do need to have this back and forth energy cycle in order to sustain. Like I say, even like the tomato plant, take for example. So you have the tomato, it grows, it matures, it ages or ripens, falls off, dies, but it still gives back to the plant even in its death as it necrotizes. And so that then becomes fertilizer for the new plant or new fruit coming on. So even in death, we have this energetic loop. And for us, as far as climate goes, what do we give up in order to get the sustainability? What do we give up in order to get more on the backside? So it's a very interesting thing, and I'm not so sure that we all, have a handle on what we're giving and really what the science is and data is of what we need to give in order to get. Like, I don't know that, science has 100% in control of what all we can do, but certainly that if we get that subconscious likes that because that's the 8 years old, the gimme phase. And so that, I think, is the key and ticket into getting people to give more and to do more is what they'll get in return. And to have that be a real thing, because to say, we get to live here and we get to enjoy life on the planet, you see people really coming into themselves when they have children because they can personalize that experience. This is my baby that will get to grow and survive. So it's pretty interesting. There's Judge Sidney. Oh, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, when you frame it in that give and take type of a metaphor, which is kind of a yin and yang model, I think it's interesting because it kind of challenges people, because especially in the U.S. where it is all around individualism and people are just generally oriented towards what's in it for me, and consumption. Here you're basically asking and recognizing that if you look at the ecosystem, when you look at Earth as an example, it is sustainable because it recycles itself.
Yes.
It gives life to other things, but as it decays, as it dies, it goes through a whole cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in human relationship and also our self-actualization, when we recognize that we're part of a bigger kind of a ecosystem, the give and get makes perfect sense. And it's not, it shouldn't feel like opposing aspects.
No,
I want
no.
to go a little bit deeper because I think your area of work is so fascinating. Why do you say that hypnosis is the new meditation? And why is a trance so important?
So trance is simply a deep state or a state of relaxation. It doesn't actually even matter how deep. There's varying depths. But the idea that trance is something foreign to us, a lot of people, think of stage show hypnosis. In fact, I laugh that Chris Angel lives right across the arroyo from me here in Las Vegas. We see each other's houses. But it's interesting because it's not the swinging watch, and it's not the cloaked figure, and it's not the person who's going to, expose you, or that you're going to, cluck like a chicken or bark like a dog. It's not that at all. It can be for those who engage in stage show hypnosis, but this is different. This is clinical. And what I enjoy about it is that trance is a natural state. So if you think about when you watch a film and you know that the actors are actors, but you shed a tear anyway because it's so moving, it touches you emotionally. Emotions are in the subconscious. If you're afraid, you run from something that isn't really going to get you, like just say a scary movie or a horror film, but yet, and fear is deep in the subconscious. So it really is the touchy-feely part of it. But we can't live there all the time. Like, what if that's all we did was, feel emotion, and we never, had our consciousness to get through our day? So you can't live in that space. But what the brain does is it allows you, and the mind allows you to have what I call your screensaver mode. So trance is really that. If you drive a car for a long distance and you don't remember the last few miles, or you're staring at a beautiful fire pit and the dancing flames have you mesmerized or have you entranced, that's that. And if you think about just the word entrance is in trance, right? So you're entering the state. It's a beautiful thing. So when you're sleeping, you're in trance. And that floaty feeling right before you fall asleep, or that floaty feeling right before you wake up, that's trance. Another way people relate to it is like when you're at a concert and you see everyone has their phones on flame and they're all waving to the music, right? And then the entertainer hits that high note and everybody gets goosebumps and they go crazy. And that's that moment where that artist is your hypnotist. So anything, like if I said to you, Scott, what's your top 5 priorities? Put them on a piece of paper for me. Those are your hypnotists. That's what has you in trance, mesmerized. That's what's got your attention. People joke, men like large shiny objects, women like small shiny objects, just like a fish. It's like it doesn't matter. We're in trance. And so when people meditate, there's that feeling of, okay, I need to go and I need to get in this quiet space. But with trance, it's already happening to you. It's happening during the day, no matter what it is, drifting off. And that zoning out period is really your greatness. That's where things come to you. That's where channeling happens. That's where all the opportunity is, as opposed to micro-focusing on an issue, which would be in the conscious mind.
It's interesting because as I'm listening, it is something that we already do. It's in a way, it's not necessarily a new skill acquisition. It's something that helps us to maybe focus on something that we do already, but use it to help bridge and connect with the area of our brain that sometimes we're just not aware of. And that having that connectivity allows for us to bring forth something that's important to us, and we kind of regrounds us to what really matters to us versus just going through the motion.
Yes, because like in the mornings, my husband and I, we either run or walk the loop around our house. And what's interesting is people come by and, they pass by and they're listening to all different things. Like sometimes you'll hear them listening to a podcast, or sometimes it'll be music. And I think, we really inundate ourselves with so much listening power, and there's so much to hear. And, we're in this info age that the last thing we're really doing is listening to ourselves in many levels. And the impetus for this book was that 1,000 less things to do if you pay attention to your own machinery. I'm all about bringing in information. I'm all about intake. In fact, one of my, joking kind of nightmares is if I didn't have access to, some intake, whether it was a book or a magazine or something to read or some information to absorb. But the truth is that we have it, and we have this mechanism. So I don't sell it. You can't buy it. You can't go out and get it. You came into this experience with it. So the book really is about how to plug it in, how to use it, how to optimize your already mental experience that you already have. And women don't have it more than men. I know you'll hear women all the time say, oh, it's women's intuition, it's gut feelings, it's primal, it's all these things, but we all have it. And the beauty is that it's so informative. Like, I could give you, this is fun. I can't do it now because you're not physically in front of me, but if I had an envelope, I would hand it to you, and you would not have access to the impression inside that closed, sealed envelope. Although you could take a pen and you could scribble, get some kind of impression, some kind of intuition from just holding the envelope. They call it remote viewing. It's a very crude, mild form and more playful form of remote viewing. That you literally can take it. Like, I have paper here. So if you didn't know things that were written on this paper, we could just fold it up, and I could say, hold the paper. And chances are you would draw something that related or had something to do with what was inside that you visually had no impressionistic advantage over. But yet you have it, and you don't know it. And when people open the envelope and they see it, they are so shocked. And some of them cry, some of them laugh. I mean, it's amazing. It's really a neat exercise.
There was this demonstration that was set up by a technology company, and they've actually equipped the user with a brain-computer interface. And the brain signals were then connected to varying different lights. So when they were not blindfolded and they could just see everything, what a signal was, it was just like a cacophony of noise. In other words, when we're on our phone, when we're on our computer, when we're talking, or like I said, even just passing by people or cars, we're so distracted, we can't even hear ourselves think. Now, when they blindfolded the person that's wearing this BCG head cap, all of a sudden the color changed because they were, in effect, in a trance, because now they can actually hear themselves and think about what's important to them. Now, one thing that I want to just kind of dig a little bit deeper, and we'll kind of wrap up here, is what happens when people are, because, frankly speaking, America is going through anxiety and depression, because an opioid is the manifestation of that. So if you get into a trance, how do you balance the fact that somebody's going through depression and anxiety and stress with the fact that what they really need? How do they work itself?
So addiction, anytime someone's using and abusing substance for pleasure or whatever, they are trying to get into trance. They are trying to go unconscious. They are trying to get sub, you see, because being knocked out and being unaware is that state. That's the state that they're striving for. So it's ironic in many ways that, we work with addicts all the time, because mindset and perception really shape your life. And mindset and perception certainly shape an addict's life. And so when they're coherent, their mindset is riddled with anxiety, depression, all of those things that drives them into that desire for this unconscious state. So it's unfortunate and fortunate in one hand, and the other is that that's the state that they're driven towards, because that really is the nirvana state. That's the state of euphoria, that state of ability and that comfort without substance is like you've hit the jackpot. But you don't have to sit on a mountaintop. You do not have to be, in the lotus position. You do not have to have any of that. And I respect those that do. But let me say, it's right here. It's in traffic jams. It's in all that. I can show you a quick little exercise. Would you like to
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So basically, it's using your peripheral vision. And you can also do this if you're awoken in the middle of the night and you can't go back to sleep. So it's equivalent to counting sheep, except for your eyes don't go back and forth. So if you just stare at something in front of you and you focus on that thing, so just find a spot that you'll stare at. I'm going to stare at the camera. And then while you're staring at that spot, allow your eyesight to diffuse off to the sides, so you're engaging your peripheral vision. And we all know what that feels like. And if you don't know what that feels like, then just put your hands out here so you can kind of see the movement of your hands. And stretch them as far as you can still see them. Like mine are here and I can still see them. Yeah. Now, in that state, if you take your tongue and you put it at the roof of your mouth as opposed to letting it sit at the palate, Now, at that stage, it's easy to do when we're calm and comfortable because we're not trying to eliminate any negative emotions. But if you're experiencing a negative emotion and you go into that state of periphery, that emotion leaves. They can't happen at the same time. Now, what's interesting about this when you're upset, so let's just say that you're in a traffic jam and someone's cut you off and you feel like you're going to experience road rage. You would immediately then look ahead, find something to focus on, go into periphery. So now you still see everything. In fact, you have a broader perspective, which is why it works. And that's why the mind likes it, because it goes from micro to macro, right? And all of a sudden you straighten up and you see the big picture, so to speak. And so when you're in that position, you instantly feel better. You can study in that position. You can give speeches in that position. All of these things you can move around and take periphery with you. So if I turn this way, I'm still in peripheral vision, although I'm not hard focusing on the spot. Same thing if I move this way, I'm still in peripheral vision. You can read in it. You can study in it. And then when you go to test, for students, when you go to test, you go back into periphery to recall the information. That's the magic of peripheral vision. So it's a safety catch for negative emotions, and it works very good. So at night, let's say that you wake up in the middle of the night and you want to go back to sleep. So you close your eyes, focus on that spot with eyes closed, allow your sight to go to periphery with eyes closed, and then you'll fall right back to sleep. So it's the same idea as the counting sheep. That back and forth of the counting sheep going back and forth over the fence is that fatiguing of the system. So diffusing the problem and whatever your mind might be going through that has you up and worried.
So as you were talking, Kimberly, I was actually going through that exercise with you. And what I noticed as I was kind of examining it was that, you know, when I'm not in that trance state, I'm thinking about what do I have to ask in terms of the next question and just kind of balancing everything. But once I got into that state, all the other kind of, you know, heavy cognitive germane load went to the side and I could just have almost like tunnel vision in a way. Yes. And there was an incredible high degree of concentration of focus. Yes. And all the distractions just disappeared. And it's interesting because this is exactly what we do in martial arts for meditation as well. And then the last story I'm going to share is when I was in Czech Republic, an Israeli friend invited me and we were in the top of this mountain where it used to be a rock quarry. And in the middle of nowhere, he said, just randomly, he said, Scott, I want to invite you to be in the moment now. And it just kind of got into a trance. And I did too, without really much prompting. And later, you know, 15 minutes later, he said, Scott, I do this with lots of people around the world. And you're the first person that got into that trance or that state within like 10 seconds. But it's amazing. Because what you're talking about has real science behind how our brain works.
Yes.
And most of the time, you know, people talk about multitasking and doing this and that, but you know, the reality is we're linear. We can't multitask. And that actually makes us less efficient and less optimal. Here, you're teaching people to be optimal and to get back to what they really need without the use of substance abuse.
Right. For sure. Because here's the thing. We have it all together. We just don't necessarily know it. So you don't want to go through life not knowing that you have your greatest mechanism right here, literally, in just these few square inches. And it's, you know, it's 100% sustainable, 100% organic, 100% natural, 100% private if you choose to keep it that way. I mean, it's the most beautiful thing going and there to help you. I mean, how many times do you get the tap on the shoulder? You know, did you turn off the oven? Did you close the garage door? All of these little things that are so magnificent that if you just pay attention to it, it's like your concierge. You know, we're all looking for a VIP experience in one way or another, and this is your own mental VIP experience.
Terrific. So how can people follow your work as well as to be able to get a copy of your book?
Well, so it's available on Amazon and all retailers nationwide, brick and mortar and online stores everywhere. It has done so well. In fact, CNN announced it as one of Amazon's bestsellers. And it was number 3. The third day it was out, it was number 1 in its category and number 1 bestseller and new release the third day out. People really want to know about themselves, you know, which makes sense. But it's interesting because it did a crossover for men as well. There was a 48% male buy and a 52% female buy. So I was very excited about that. It was 10 books that every lawyer should read. It was 25 books that America's leading CEOs are reading. So it's really hitting a lot of those best spirit books. Also, there's a soul spirit section in here. And my website is KimberlyFriedmutter.com. That's the only other thing. And then, Twitter and Instagram and all those things. But the main thing is just get familiar with your own mechanism. It's my greatest joy for people to get this information, because then we're just all traveling fast and we're all traveling succinct and beautifully, because it really is a huge, huge additive for depressives and anxietal and all of that. There's so many issues, but it really nips them in the bud.
So today I've been joined by Kimberly Friedmutter, a world-renowned hypnotherapist and the author of Subconscious Power. Kimberly, it's been terrific.
My greatest pleasure.